Hello, and welcome to a new era of Umbreon Libris with a new installment of one of the oldest series on this channel. Since there are literally thousands of new people who subscribed since the release of the last video in this series, let me give a quick rundown of the new 151. Back in 2016, my friend Infinipede and I decided to mark the 20th anniversary of Pokemon by redesigning every Kanto Pokemon, updating their design philosophy to better match modern trends, and just generally changing the things that we didn't like so much about them. We posted the starters on Pokemon Day that year, planning to post one new family each week. Suffice it to say that we only just finished this past September. Along the way, we also had another friend, Banana Meteor, join us as a collaborator. So we finished the redesigns, and you can see them all on our Tumblr page. But in this video series, we look back on our designs to discuss what their concepts were, how they evolved, and how we're feeling about them in hindsight. Today, we are covering Ditto, which Infinipede took the lead on, Eevee, Vaporeon, Jolteon, and Flareon, which I did, and Porygon, which is also Infinipede's. Banana Meteor wasn't able to join us for this recording session, so here's my conversation with Infinipede, starting with Ditto.
My original concept was I wanted to give it traits of a virus, particularly a bacteriophage virus, because that's one of the most recognizable looking viruses. And then you brought up Ditto being a failed Mew clone, and I was like, okay, I can run with that too. It's not a theory I particularly believe in, personally. I'm very neutral on it. But I thought it would help add a bit more to Ditto as well.
That part was probably a little bit tricky because we were several months away from designing Mew at the time.
Yeah, but I knew that Mew was probably going to stay like cat-ish and probably have a similar looking tail. So I incorporated those into my design. I don't think we changed much. You just used a different pose than I did.
I remember that we struggled a little bit with the eyes. I remember us talking about it looking like a Kirby character.
I think it still does, but I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
So since this one didn't change too much, how do you feel about it now?
It looks fine. I like it. I wish I had more to say about it, but I think it's just a solid redesign. I think the bacteriophage/RNA coil is enough to make it more interesting than just a blob without making it too not Ditto.
Yeah, all right. Well, do you have anything else to add about Ditto?
Nope.
I'm sure you'll have a lot more to say about Porygon. But
of course.
So Eevee, the thing for me is that Eevee already is a pretty much perfect design. There's a reason that it's among the most popular Pokemon of all time. It makes a really good balance of just like being a generic mammal. So it has features of felines, of canines, of rabbits, and like you can say it's a bunny, you can say it's a fox, you can say it's a cat. All of those are equally valid, right? Because it's all of those at the same time. I think that really helps with just allowing it to turn into whatever. So the only thing that I really wanted to change about it was the style of the design, because it's a very Gen 1 kind of design in terms of like the proportions and the like level of detail and the hair and that kind of thing. I took a lot of inspiration from more recent mammalian Pokemon like Sprigatito and Fennekin, the like small and cute kind of mammalians. They have much bigger heads, they have much simpler paws. So that was all I did. It was almost like a style transfer. I think the only thing that I really added was a little hint of color in the eye that's meant to be like foreshadowing for the evolutions.
The ear tufts, were those inspired by like more modern designs? Because Eevee has like those very small ear tufts.
Yeah, that was probably part of the Fennekin influence there. And I guess I kept the little hair at the top of the head that, you know, could be styled in the Let's Go game. For the evolutions, mostly I wanted to give them more variety in their body shapes while still keeping a lot of elements that are just kind of consistent from one to the other to make it obvious that they are related. They all have 3 different body colors, they all have some kind of face marking, they all have some kind of collar, and they all have some kind of hair design on the head. And I also wanted to ensure that all of them had a representation of their element in a mammalian form, in the way that like the original Flareon, it has a kind of flame-shaped tail, but it's fur, right? It's not like a Magmar having actual fire on it. And this encompasses most of the evolutions, including the modern ones. They tend to have an elemental representation that is still a mammalian feature. Vaporeon was the most radical change because Vaporeon to me is like a fish out of water. In like every sense of it, the fins make it feel really dissonant from all of the other Eevee evolutions because it's not a mammalian feature. It looks too fishy to me. It also feels more like a representation of fishness rather than of elemental water. So Vaporeon lost all of the fins, and I made it into a river otter. The markings on the face and the ridge on the back have a wave shape. The hair on the top of the head is like a pompadour, but it also looks like splashing water. And the collar is meant to look like sea foam or bubbles. Jolteon, it's a cheetah. Because of the speed element of it, it just seemed really fitting. As soon as I thought of Jolteon as a cheetah, I thought the tear tracks that cheetahs have, I immediately pictured that as a lightning shape. So the fur is all pointy and it has a pointy mohawk in it, so it all just kind of looks like it has a lot of static electricity flowing through it, like when you get shocked and your hair goes all pointy. It also has the lightning blue choker as a collar. That and the blue tips of the ears are in part to add color, because otherwise it would just be a yellow and black design, and it needed something to give a little bit more variety. Blue lightning is something that Pokemon has used a lot, and we've used a lot as well.
Are you still happy with the blue? Because I know that's something it took a while for us to decide on.
I am actually very happy with the blue. And I think between the choker, the like colored ear tips, and the mohawk, it also has this kind of punk aesthetic, which I also associate with electricity, with like being a kind of electric music and a kind of electric lifestyle as well. And the spots are also meant to look like speed arrows because it's really fast. Flareon is a maned wolf, and its mane is supposed to look, and its tail are supposed to look like large flowing flames. The extremities are meant to look charred, and the ears are shaped to look kind of like cartoony candle flames.
Flareon probably has the most Eevee-like proportions, as in, like, it's very short and stout. Is there a reason you picked, like, the maned wolf as sort of the basis for it, when that's, like, a really long animal with very long legs?
To me, the kind of stout shape of Flareon was just never a significant, important element of its design. I thought the maned wolf, for one, it does give a lot of variety to the body because it is very different from the kind of stock Eevee evolution body shape. But it also, because it's orange, and because it does have a mane that seemed to fit Flareon, and because it does have darker extremities on the paws and on the nose, again, it just seemed naturally to fit in with this idea of like charred extremities. So the change in body proportions was more just like incidental. The maned wolf just seemed a really natural fit for all of these other reasons. Honestly, looking back at all of them, the only thing that I would do differently is that I think Vaporeon needs more color variety. Like, it does have 3 different colors, but it's all 3 different shades of blue. I don't know, like maybe the really dark blue could have been like an ocean green or like an algae green that would still stick with the theme, but make it just less all blue. Other than that, honestly, I'm really happy with all of these. Eevee in particular, I feel like is perfect. Not just because I really like Eevee and I think I did a good job, but like the whole idea behind this project was to redesign Pokemon if they were done nowadays. And I think that someone coming up with the Eevee concept nowadays to fit with the modern Pokemon aesthetic would do something that's very close to what I have.
I agree. It's got that modern body type and proportions and stuff. I wanted Porygon to represent quantum computing, which you can think of as the next step in computing, how we have like the bits now, which are binary. You know, qubits could be any number of things. Based on, quantum principles and such. What I came up with to kind of represent that was the Tesseract, as well as using chemistry and physics concepts in the general look of Porygon. My original drawing was very messy, but Libris definitely helped neaten it out and kind of represent the Tesseract in a, 2-dimensional art way, which helped a lot, as well as the way we ended up positioning the arms looked a lot like one of the electron orbitals, which are sort of the areas of the atom in which electrons can possibly be found, so another concept related to quantum mechanic stuff.
your idea was that Porygon was supposed to be advanced. A 3D model just isn't advanced anymore.
It really isn't. And so it became difficult to represent the concept. And I think that's because so many of those concepts have to do with things that we can't see or are even hard to conceptualize from like a human brain perspective if you haven't like studied them. Technology that everyone but the people who are really studying and pushing it forward aren't really going to understand from anything but layman's terms.
We heavily relied on existing representations of those things, right? Obviously, we can't really conceptualize what a tesseract is, a cube made of cubes, but we have a common way that is represented, so we can use that.
Same with, I think it's the p orbital we used. I like to imagine that he moves in a way that is sort of representative of the fact that he's constantly switching through possibilities and calculating different outcomes. Like maybe he's blinking, maybe the Tesseract is rotating, his arms are rotating, but as a 2D drawing, you can't really represent that.
Are there any other Pokemon that have kind of a similar approach? There's definitely a lot of modern Pokemon, like Clodsire, for example. If you just look at the like little icon for it, it doesn't give you the full sense of its design because you don't get to see the little horns that come out when it attacks, right? Because Pokemon are made for 3D nowadays, like movement and changing their shape is something that is very common. But we don't have a lot of really abstract concepts in Pokemon. When we do have them, so like Porygon Z, for example, there's a little work that you need to do with the design and with the way that it moves to really sell that. So I'm just trying to think if there are other Pokemon.
Sandy Shocks. It does not read as having the ferrofluid on it. It looks a lot like fur if you're not looking at the way it moves and rotates, and especially if you've seen videos of ferrofluid, it's like, that's what it is. So I think Pokemon is occasionally playing with that sort of high-level concept of the way this moves is very important.
And in the final pose, we have it as something that could still be interpreted as a duck.
I think that's one of the most iconic things about Porygon. Oh, he's an advanced 3D model and he's flying through the internet, but everyone just calls him a duck because he is. I don't know why Pokemon chose that, but it's one of the things that I remember most about Porygon. He's just a little digital duck. I still like it very much. I don't know if there's anything else we could have done with the idea that would have made sense or wouldn't have made him super busy. Like, we could have added the other 2 p orbitals somehow, but that would have made him very busy. I think this is a good representation of the concept I was going for.
And that's all for today. Let us know in the comments what you thought of these redesigns. We're really close to the end of this series, so I hope you're looking forward to our last few episodes. Thank you, Infinipede, for joining me today. Thank you for watching, and thank you to everyone who supports my work. Even if you just leave a like, a comment, or if you subscribe, that already helps a lot. But if you want to go the extra mile, consider becoming a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button or dropping me a tip on Ko-fi. This will be a year of few videos, but I hope that you can tell that I'm committed to making them high quality. And if you can't yet, well, I'll see you in the next chapter.